Good morning. Good morning. I want to thank General President Harold Schattberger for inviting me to address you. I almost felt like I needed to go out and take the exam to enter the service with you men and women today after that speech. To have somebody have your back like that is so important. So I understand that as a leader of our small city, but the leadership that you provide is phenomenal to the men and women in this room today and all across the countries that we serve. I also want to commend General Secretary Kelly for his service. As a former budget and a finance director, I was just thinking, oh my gosh, if his investment portfolio looks that good, we're going to hire him in Charlotte to come down as the finance director. Are you interested?
What's it pay?
Not enough. Not enough. And I also want to recognize with pride and honor my hometown, the Charlotte Firefighters Local 660, who stand and invited me today, who stand with me, stood with me, and without them, I want you to know our city would not be the place that it is today. So it's my honor to be here with you today. When I think about it, it's interesting that I'm considered the special guest for this summit. The truth is, I've never rushed into a burning building when everyone else is trying to get out. I've never held someone's life in my hands and given the medical assistance needed to keep them alive. And even though municipal government can be tough, I've never gone into work knowing that I may be facing danger at some point that day. Although some days as a newly elected mayor of Charlotte, that's not quite true. There are some days I wish I could just go home. But we all have those days. But the most important part of this is to know that you are all special, every one of you in this room, and everyone that you represent in the fire service. What you do every day is heroic, and I'd like to personally thank you for the dedication and the sacrifice it takes to keep our community safe. I know that sacrifice extends beyond you. It extends to your families. It extends to the other people that you work with every day. But it is important that you have the support from people like me that get elected to serve you, actually. I never separate the people that are employed by our community as citizens of our community. Now, some people would say that as mayor of Charlotte, I stand in success. I have to admit, being the first African-American woman mayor has been quite interesting. I've had interviews on CNN. I've had the opportunity to be followed by an Australian TV network. I've had the opportunity to be photographed for Essence Magazine. Now, if you don't know what Essence Magazine is, you will after your diversity training. There are so many things that I've done, but I want you to know that when I was elected mayor, what I said to myself is, I am just an instrument. You know that song that is sang in my Christian faith, you know, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. What I say as mayor of Charlotte is, Lord, make me an instrument of the citizens of Charlotte, because only then can I be successful. There are a lot of things that contributed to my ability to stand here before today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Much of it started when I was growing up in a small capital city of South Carolina. You know, I used to tell this joke that if you move to South Carolina, you move one South Carolina too far. But I can't say that about my state anymore. They're really doing well. I am one of 6 children, and I am the only girl. So sometimes I tell people I live in Charlotte because all of my brothers live in Columbia, and I knew I'd never get a date. So I know a thing about being in a male-dominated environment. But that's okay, because I'm stronger for it. I've also got a great left hook. I want to tell you about my father, who was a great man. My father didn't graduate from high school, but he was a veteran. He went to the war in Italy, and he built roads. As the troops would go to battle, he'd build that road for them to travel on. And then after those battles happened, he'd come back and bury the dead. He came home from the war and realized that there was a GI Bill that was available to veterans. If you know your history, you'll know the GI Bill had 3 components. You could buy a house at a reduced rate, Levittown. You could get a loan to go to college, again at a reduced rate, or you could get a preference for working with the federal government. My father only had one choice out of those 3. Because he was African American, the only one that he qualified for was a job preference. The United States government gave him the chance to continue the work that he had done in the military at Fort Jackson in Columbia, South Carolina. And he started a small business, rebuilding Fort Jackson, building roads, paving roads, moving houses, all of those things to make the fort convert after the war. His company is still thriving today with my 5 brothers running it. I'm really proud of them because they support a number of families of the people that they employ. And they've done it because our dad taught us that hard work leads to opportunity, and opportunity leads to growth and success. That's a lesson that I wish all of us could learn and enjoy. When I started going to college, I had the stars in my eyes to go to the big city of Charlotte, 90 miles up the road. But I had boys on my mind, actually. The stars and the boys, they didn't quite align for a little while. I think boys were winning at that point. I wanted to come to the big city of Charlotte to seek the opportunities that were not available in South Carolina. Many of you probably are not familiar. Brown versus Board of Education was approved in 1951. South Carolina integrated their schools in 1964. Charlotte had done integration earlier, but I had the opportunity in 1969 to attend a small women's college in Charlotte. I was one of 5 African American students, and I have to tell you, it was quite an adjustment. When you grow up in that family environment like we all hope to have, you have particularly in your fire service, you think that you're going to have that when you go to a new place. College was supposed to be a place that I would be able to grow and flourish, but it really wasn't for me. The black students all had to room together, and there were 5 of us, remember, so 2 of us roomed together. That was 2 rooms. And 1 had to room by herself because the black student could not room with the white student at the time. Now, I know that you think I'm very old, but I'm not. This happened to me in college. And I realized that it was going to be very difficult, and opportunities at that school were not going to just come to me easily. So I went home, and I told my mom, I said, "Mom, this isn't what I thought. There are no boys, first of all. It was a women's school. There were no people that looked like us that had that same kind of background. And I just did not want to go back." But her words to me that day shaped me for the rest of my life, my future. She said to me, "We don't quit." And that has been a lesson for me all the time. So when you see the women and men that work for you that perhaps don't look like you, remember, they may be thinking of quitting, and it's your job to say to them, "We don't quit." When life and circumstances rise up against you, you must push back as hard as you can, because that's the only way we can make a difference. So again, I remembered always what my father taught me, that hard work creates opportunity, and opportunity creates success. I finished my degree at the Women's College and attended UNC Chapel Hill, which lost to North Carolina State this weekend. Hard to watch that game in overtime. And I earned a master's in public administration. You've heard a little bit about me in the introduction, where the city of Charlotte hired me as a budget analyst. I became budget director. I sat with 3 fire chiefs and learned how to schedule firefighters. And there were no computers, no software, nothing. We sat down with lots of spreadsheets and filled it all out. But what I learned really made a big difference. It helped me understand every day what you do. Now, after a 30-year in local government, I decided to retire. And one of the reasons that that decision came to me is that I was experiencing a major hurdle. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Now, you know what cancer is like, but think about this as you think about diversity. Here I am, just a middle-class, working African-American woman with breast cancer, and yet more African-American women in my position, in my demographic group, die from breast cancer than any other group, except other women of color. So that's why you can have this affinity. We know that sometimes as we build groups, cohorts they call them now, cohorts share successes, but they also share difficulties. I share this bond about cancer survivor with you because I know how cancer continues to threaten members of the fire service. Cancer is the leading cause of death among all firefighters, and 60% of the names on the fallen firefighter wall, memorial wall in Colorado Springs, have died as a result of occupational cancer. We must put an end to this terrible threat. In Charlotte's department, we have 44 documented cases of occupational cancer. In the last 2 years, 3 of our firefighters have died as a result of cancer, and all of them were under the age of 50. I know that you have efforts underway to fight for increased cancer legislation, and I commend you for that. And I am encouraged that you're taking this step. In North Carolina, we are one of only 6 states without preemptive legislation for firefighters, and I don't think it's going to change. On Thursday, I know that you're going to host your Cancel Summit, and I sincerely hope that you do everything in your power to address this work issue, and you work really hard to reduce the number of cancer cases for all firefighters. We can't afford to lose good men and women to a disease that we just need to invest in and change the conditions of. Now, I also want to talk a little bit more because one of the reasons I stand here before you today is I came to attend one of the diversity meetings in Charlotte, and I spoke about the issue of diversity and the need for creating a more diverse workplace, not just in the fire department, but across every spectrum of our country. 8 weeks ago, I was sworn in as the first African-American woman to be mayor of Charlotte. But did you know that Charlotte's first African-American firefighter started protecting our city after a request for a colored fire company was made in the 1850s? So nearly 170 years before I took office, we had men of color, not men and women, men of color, risking their lives to protect the community, more particularly the community that they lived in. They actually went on to form 2 African-American fire companies. But as it turns out, those first firefighters were actually slaves that were put on loan by their slave owners. When city leaders decided to create an official fire department in 1875, those men who had previously served and risked their lives were no longer allowed to work and serve. It took almost 100 years, in 1967, before the Charlotte Fire Department hired its first African-American firefighter. Then another 4 years passed before it hired the second African-American firefighter. Eventually, in 1980, Charlotte brought on its first female firefighter and the first African-American female firefighter a year later. I'm proud to say both of those women retired 4 years ago, and one of them reached the rank of battalion chief. So my point to you is, we've been slow to achieve change, but we keep trying because we don't quit. We're going to create a fire department in my city that represents all of our residents. I hope that you'll be challenged to do the same. Right now in Charlotte, 78% of active firefighters are white males. Black males make up 12%, so women and other minorities account for just 10% of the department. Our city has an entirely different demographic than that. I know that we've struggled, and I expect that you continue to struggle to find diverse candidates. But I want you to know that with the pride that you have in your organization, you can create that pride among people of color, men and women, and they will bring to you that same giving back if you will just make that attempt to reach out and make a difference to make this possible for people to serve. We have developed several new initiatives, one of which is Charlotte's Fire Department Camp Ignite, which I know is a model we've taken from other places. I'm always glad to take good ideas and relocate them to Charlotte. We offer a firefighting camp, career camp for young women. I've attended that camp, I've dressed in full gear, and I've never had such hard work and felt such great pleasure at doing something. Jaws of life, measuring everything on the truck. And those young women, we now bring back a second year in hopes that as they graduate from high school and go to college, that they will want to come and join our wonderful department. We've also worked on the development of a public safety magnet high school. Now, why is that important? If you don't grow up in the community of firefighting, and in fact, if your community that you grow up in actually doesn't have that kind of idea of respect for authority and that respect for the people that you are, then how are they going to want to be you? So we're going to try to start something where we can teach in high school what it means to be, and we can teach in a high school where there are young men and women of color. We also work really hard on our public affairs teams to reach people. Outreach is really important. We use the media with special stories specifically about success of African American people of color, men and women, that really will promote firefighting so that we can get into markets that perhaps we've never been in. We have an antique truck, now known as the Pink Lady, that if you'll see in all of our parades, and we show women firefighters in those parades with the idea that when people see that we're reinforcing that this is an opportunity for you, someone that perhaps you wouldn't ordinarily think, would they agree, or some young woman would see it? So I also want to say finally, I am personally committed. Before my election, I hosted a fire department town hall where we had an open discussion, particularly for African American and Latino women, about how they can prepare to enter the fire service, what's out there, what the opportunities are, and how can we help them. All of this is still a work in progress, but I can assure you that Charlotte is focused on making this change, and we will continue to push forward to achieve our goal of increased diversity. By all accounts, we have the people in Charlotte to make it happen. The people in fire service, the people that are here today representing our city. We have the people to make this happen. We just have to put our shoulders down and begin to do it. And I know this because my city has become a prime destination for many different people, occupations. Over 44 people move to Charlotte every day. We're the #1 new location for millennials. We're the top choice for members of the military, as well as the #1 location city for small businesses. We're growing. And this month, Charlotte was named by Forbes magazine as one of the top cities in America where African Americans are faring best economically. And all of that may be true, but I can tell you that my focus in Charlotte are in areas of the community where African American and Latino families exist in a cycle of poverty handed down by generation and generation of public policy. We talk about it often. We call it the problem that we have with economic disparity. And where do we change to create economic opportunity? And I hope that one thing that you and I can commit to do is to show them that one place to find economic opportunity, to find a place where you belong, a place that you can take pride in and value your work, is with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Fire Department. So wouldn't it be great to eliminate two problems, economic opportunity and disparity in our diversity, with just one solution: coming to work for the fire department? It's pretty simple, isn't it? Let's just get people to work in a place that they can be proud of, because you're proud of what you do now. So I'm going to finish up and extend first your early birthday wishes for this wonderful organization. 100 years of existence is absolutely one of those things that people can be most proud of. That clearly means that you've been successful in all of your goals, all of your missions for firefighting. And I'd like to thank you for all that you do. Steve Ballmer, who is the former CEO of Microsoft, did a study recognizing or developed a matrix of all governmental spending. And in that, he recognized the #1 improvement in governmental services across the entire country was professional firefighting. So here's to the next 100 years of advancing professional fire and emergency services for everyone. It has been my privilege to speak to you today. Thank you again for having me, and God bless.
Thank you. So inspiring. What a wonderful, wonderful